And at the end of the day, some of us will be able to go and say, yes, I've learned something. I want to go on and practice. But we didn't have that. We were restricted to half day, and the half day fell short of even the slot we wanted. We wanted this to end at about 1 or 1:30, just to be able to go for lunch. The second regret is that we could not bring along our technical partners. In the university, all three of us, we are teachers. We conceived of this idea of integrating technology. We got to a point we needed technical assistance. So we went and consulted with technologists in our computer resource center, explained what we wanted to do, and we got them. What we wanted to use, and we got them to go on trial by error. We made a lot of mistakes. We made decisions that we shouldn't have made. We learned in the process, and at the end of the day, but we wanted to have 6 of us here because we invited software developers and teachers, principals, those who work in any of the areas who could make use of this platform. Unfortunately, our university was able to sponsor only 3 of us. We got in touch with eLearning Africa. They said technical partners should apply for scholarship. Unfortunately, they didn't get it, and therefore they were unable to come. So I'm apologizing because those software developers who would want to engage with our technical people may not have the full benefit of what we had to offer. But as I said, this will continue. They are on hand, actually, back in Nigeria, trying to keep in touch with us over what we are trying to do. So we'll go on. The presentation is here. They have prepared a presentation, which you are going to have. You can copy it and properly look at it. If you then have questions, we'll direct it to them, and they will be able to chat with you. Okay? Now, blended learning, as I said, a pedagogical template for low resource contexts. I have just about 7 slides here, which I'm going to run through quickly. The bulk of the work is already prepared in what we're going to do in groups. But the explanation should tell us what we have done and what we propose. Of course, this is a social learning context. In our case, our practice is reified to a level. But when we come to a social learning space such as this, some of these things will change. We are ready to learn as well. We continue learning, given whatever you bring into this conversation. These are as I said, some of the characteristics of the low resource context. Inadequate classrooms, lecture theaters, lack of teaching materials and facilities, inadequate numbers of teachers, large student enrollment vis-a-vis teachers and the facilities that are available, technology poor context, bandwidth, most critical, electricity beyond the capital cities in most of our rural areas, where up to 70% of our people live. Electricity and technology not available. And then teaching, learning face-to-face and by rote. In most of our contexts, the teacher is the oracle, stands in front of the class, pours down, in quotes, knowledge. Everybody laps it up. And our students, during our survey of them, they told us that we've been wasting their time. in our classrooms. They say, you guys have been wasting our time. All you do is give us what you have, and we know what you require. We lap it up, and we throw it back at you during tests and examinations. And at the end of that, don't ask me any question on that topic because I wouldn't know. And they coined a term for it. It's a mixture of English and French, but of course bastardized. They call it le cram l'apport. Le cram l'apport. So you require me to cram whatever you've given to me in your notes. I cram it, and during the tests, I pour it out. And that's all the knowledge that I've got. So that's what we mean by learning by rote. Anything. Now this is the component of our template. The teacher, the practitioner is there in the center. And like the typical village toddler learning, we are all learners. We're all learners. That's our experience of it anyway. But around all of these templates is what we call ICT skills, the basic ICT skills we require. Many of our practitioners don't have the basic. We didn't have it when we started. We had to pay, get a few people who knew how to do it, and show me how to do it. How do you use PowerPoint? How do you use Microsoft Office? How do you use this? How do you use that? And we started learning gradually. Then you have the subject content. That's where most of us are already competent. We've been to schools, we've learned our subject matters. Biology teachers, physics teachers, psychology teachers, and so on. We are competent in our subjects. But that does not make us competent in imparting that knowledge, in getting younger people to acquire the knowledge they need to function within our societies. So the subject content, the practitioner as learner needs to learn how to put it across. Get the students, get the pupils to learn from what they already know and go on to learn a little bit more. Pedagogy is a critical aspect of it. Everywhere you get to in Africa today, we're talking about curriculum transformation, curriculum renewal, curriculum this, curriculum that. And we need to have a grasp of how to transform our curriculum in such a way that we engage the learners. Engaging the learners is the key to getting them to construct knowledge, not to cram knowledge, but to construct knowledge. Because today, tomorrow, the problems these kids are going to face are different from what we faced in our days. They are multifaceted, and they need to be equipped with the skills and knowledge to cope and solve those problems and transform the society. And unless we do this, we'll keep just the Russian roulette. And we can't afford that. Not anymore in Africa. We need to go beyond that. So pedagogy is key, and we're going to see how it's key. Then technology applications. What technology applications are there? At this eLearning Africa conference, we are going to see many Microsoft and all of them, Google, Dell, They have all these applications. They've studied the terrain. They've developed the applications. But some of the applications are difficult to get, not in a low-resourced context. Some of the applications require licenses, which your institution or your organization is unable to pay for over time. You may be able to pay in the first couple of years, but thereafter, what happens? And this is where we must keep thinking. What do we do? What applications are available to us working in low-resource context? And how to use them. Yeah. So we have the subject area, various subject areas we work in. And all of these three things feed into and they go back into those areas. The core topics and the root path to attaining knowledge and skills in those core topics. Goal setting, which must be performance-based. We're now talking about the pedagogy. Learner interest, which in most cases we never bother about as teachers or as enablers of knowledge acquisition. And when we talk about learner interest, we are talking about the enabling background knowledge that they have. How do we build on that? How do we use that as a springboard for them to learn and acquire new knowledge? All of these must be taken care of within the subject area. And to emphasize that today, we are here in Learning Africa, we are talking about ICT, we are talking about technology and technologies. That technology is not a driver. Technology is not the driver. Many believe that once you talk about technology and you have this technology, I can use this. In our university, many people will tell you, oh, I know this, I know that. We then ask, what is the impact of that which you know in technology on your teaching and the learning that your students have? They are distinct as far as they are concerned. I can use this, I can use that, but not related, not integrated into the teaching, into the curriculum. And that is no use. So technology is certainly not the driver. Pedagogy is the driver. When pedagogy is the driver, you bring in technology and use it to drive what you want to achieve. So within technology is central, the teacher is there, technology itself is there, the student is there, the content is there. All of these now must work together to achieve the goal. So, if we accept that pedagogy is what is important, then the curriculum setting that brings all of these into the pot and directs the movement of the learning and the teaching, we will then be on the right path. That's what we've done anyway, and with some very good results. So go back to pedagogy again, but breaking it down. Our curriculum has to be reformed such that it is learner-centered. We must understand that today, the curriculums we run in most institutions, except where they have developed new curriculums, are teacher-centered. This is what I know, this is what I want to teach. This is what my teacher taught, my professor taught me, and that's what I have to give. There is no knowledge that has reified to the extent that they are not being taken a second look at. As a primary school, secondary school student, I learned there were so many planets. Today I read every day, they've discovered these new planets. But in our schools, primary and secondary school, the teachers continue to teach there are 9 planets. And the kids go on to put that in their head, there are 9 planets. When they read anything about the discovery of a new planet, they are confused. Because that is, for them, 9 planets is knowledge. Anything outside of 9 is rubbish. So, learner-centered, we need to do a profiling of our students. And we don't, because they are large numbers, we don't have to take each one by one. We can classify them. There are a group of students who like learning this way. There are those who will sit in your class and they are just gazing at you throughout 2 hours. Some are busy, but busy doing some other things. And there are those who are listening very intently and lapping up everything you say, such that a week after you ask them, they can give you everything verbatim. But when it comes to research, such students are hopeless. Because all they know is sit down, tell them, they lap it up, and they give it back to you. So the student profiling will tell you how students like to learn. What are some of their interests? How can you build some of the things you want to teach them into what their interests are? Many of our youngsters today in Africa use technology a lot better than we do. But they use them in very social, absolutely social, nothing related to education ways. How can we get them to use those apps on their mobiles, on their laptops, for educational purposes? This is what we're talking about. A student likes music. Can you build music into the curriculum so that in this subject matter you do this? Games. Lots of them play games. Can you use games to teach very complex concepts? And people are already doing it. And so this is what we are talking about, being learner-centered. And that will foster autonomy. In other words, the student doesn't think he's learning only when he's in your classroom. When it's outside the classroom and doing a whole host of other things, they can also be learning. They can direct their learning and have an interest in learning. Problem or inquiry-based and project-driven activity. In learning, at any level, activity is very important. How we design the activities that carry the message is most important. And we have found this out. And so in our case, our course, even though English is project-driven, is inquiry-based, we use group work, we use collaboration. Students go out to carry out investigations, do research, come together in groups, discuss, go on our learning site, and carry out their discussions amongst them, 3,500 on the average each semester. And they are broken up into groups, and they do this work, and they discuss on the forum discussion boards. That's subject matter, but in the language we are trying to get them to use so that they can acquire proficiency. And through these means, we were able to foster collaboration and critical thinking. Critical thinking is what every employer is looking for in a young graduate employee. And they've always said they lack it. They can't think critically. They can't solve problems. But how would they solve problems if all we do in our setting is give them knowledge? They lap it up and they throw it back at you. You now have a situation different from what they have learned, but for which they could apply the principles in their very subject areas to solve the problems. But they are unable to do that. And if they are unable to do that, then there is a problem. Then learner interactions key. Interaction with other learners, interaction with the teacher, and interaction with the content, with the material. Engagement with the material. How available, easily available are the materials for learning, the resources for learning. All of these. I said earlier on that the activity is key because it's arising from pedagogy. And it's in the activity that we know that you have taken all of those elements into consideration. So, the activity design must take account of who the learners are. We are going to break this down as well. What the learning environment is. In other words, what affordances of the learning. Is it the classroom? Is it this kind of setup? Or a lecture theater where you sit? You can't even talk to the next person. You can work with them. You can reorganize the class. Is it face-to-face or online? If it's online, what are the affordances available online for them to work? Then you have the learning activity itself, which is the center. What are the components of the learning activity? What are the learning outcomes? This is where many of us fall short, as teachers, for example. We have a course that is handed to us by the institution. What goals? What outcomes? In terms of what the objectives are of the course, of the module. What are the skills? What are the knowledge bits the students are required to have? What abilities? At the end of the day, what competencies must they have when they have completed the course? That's important. And then, who are the other people involved with the course? Any course in a secondary or university will require other people. If it's science, you require the laboratory attendants, the technologists who would set up practicals. You require the assistance of librarians if it's an arts-based subject. Experts outside the institution if they must consult to solve problems or it's project-driven. All of these are important. And if we then take them one by one, for learners, what are their identities? In other words, the preferences in a learning context. What are their needs? What are their motivations? Motivation which can be intrinsic or extrinsic. If they are not intrinsically motivated, how do you motivate them to want to learn on this course? What competencies are they bringing to the course in terms of skills? You already know. We found out in our classes, large as they are, when we want to put them into groups, we allow them, but we tell them, we don't want an all-male group, we don't want an all-female group. Because many of us will want to go with their friends. And we say, look, balance it. There are things women bring into any social learning activity, and there are things that men bring. You need to leverage on each other's abilities, skills. Don't always go with your friends. There are organizers, there are analyzers, which they have, which abilities they have before coming to the course. They are natural leaders. people who have leadership abilities, who can organize. There are those who are just intelligent and are ready to put down everything that you want to do in a very neat, organized way. So you need all of these to work together in one group. These are the things you should look for. And when you form a group, you will then be able to lean on each other's abilities and knowledge and skills and work together. What roles, in other words, what approaches and modes of participating in the work can the student bring in? And the teachers also would need to know this, a little bit of this, in order to guide them to be able to develop this. Uh-oh. This is not the way it was formatted. Something is wrong somewhere. Yeah, in talking about the learning environment, we're talking about the tools, the resources that are available, in other words, the affordances of the physical and virtual environment. What are the resources you have put in place for them to use in the learning? It doesn't come out like this is in the projection. I wish I had used my own laptop. I don't know what. I must have touched something on this laptop that. So that's what we mean by the learning environment. Is it face-to-face? Is it a lecture theater? What are some of the tools, the physical things that are in place? If it is the virtual, what do you have on the virtual? We'll be taking a look at the virtual if the network permits. Technology would always fail, and therefore we have to be prepared for that. Yes, I'll just discuss with this. We'll have a copy of it. And that goes back to something I should have mentioned earlier on. One of the reasons, not the only reason, why we opted for the blended learning is that we are more comfortable with the face-to-face classroom meetings. We were learning for the virtual. And we knew that we were resource poor in terms of technology as well. Our students are complaining not about the course. They enjoy the course now. But they have to spend quite a good chunk of their pocket money in buying airtime to be able to access. And then sometimes you have these blips, failure of technology, and it's a lot of problem for them. But because we can always come back to the classroom and talk about whatever is going wrong, we felt that this is the right approach for us in our context. If it was completely online and there was a problem, then the course will suffer, and the students, of course, would suffer. So, in terms of learning environment, we're talking about the tools, resources, and the artifacts, the documents, notes, materials that have been produced that students use on the course. What are the affordances of the physical and virtual environment for learning? I said we would, if I'm able to project our learning site, we would see the examples of some of the affordances of the Moodle. Then the learning activity itself, we're talking about the specific interactions of learners with others. Specific interactions that are designed into the curriculum that we follow. We're talking about using specific tools and resources oriented towards specific outcomes. And in terms of other people, we are talking about people involved and the specific roles they play in the interactions, the support they give, the mediation roles, the challenges, the guides they provide for the students. And then in terms of outcome, what new knowledge are the students going to gain at the end of this course? What skills are they going to have? And what abilities? What artifacts are they going to be able to produce that will be a signal that they have gained some competence on this course? All of these must be built into that pedagogical approach. And the feedback that they give and we give as well. All these are parts of the learning outcomes. So, this is about the blended learning approach. The Moodle itself, what are the affordances? That's going to be the next thing that we're going to project or attempt to project. Now this is about using the Moodle virtual learning environment or learning management system. And it's about the experience of the Federal University of Technology, Akure. Moodle is the modular, object-oriented, dynamic learning environment. That's what this acronym does, Moodle. Modular, object-oriented, but it's dynamic. And we can testify to it that it's dynamic. It's a learning environment. It is open source. And that means it was put together. Yet somebody had the idea, brilliant idea, of having this kind of platform. And several software developers, teachers have contributed to the process of building it up, which is still ongoing because you have various versions of Moodle, as we shall see in a moment. Some of them are yet to be stable, but there are those that are already stable and are very useful. So it's open source. It allows full staff and student support, because several people have contributed to building it up. Teachers, developers. It takes in all the contributions of people who have used it over time. and it has evolved with sound pedagogical principles at its core. It's available on www.muldu.org. An Australian actually developed it. And because it's free, probably will get support if we were using WebCT, Blackboard, or any of these. And I think there is one that was developed in South Africa. Is that Ubuntu? Somebody from South Africa here can confirm that? Yes.
Yeah, Ubuntu Linux.
Ubuntu Linux. I haven't used it. I don't know how, but that's one other one that is, I hear is very useful. Yeah. Now, this is more oriented to developers. This is a resource for developers who would want to take a look at it and try it out in their situation. There are different versions of Moodle, and they require different versions of what they call PHP. How to install it? Install Moodle using either the manual installation or host account installation. The developers here know what we're talking about, I guess. Yeah. The manual installation processes are detailed in the next few slides. This is a longer slide because it has many screenshots apart from the guide. You can download the following link, and then to upload, you follow the following processes. You would also need to create a database for the installation. I'm not too good at this, not being a technical person, but these are the things we went through. As I said earlier on, we made a number of mistakes along the line, but we learned from our mistakes before we got on to what is now a stable platform for our students. Several times we lost data, student data. Something broke down somewhere. What happened? Where did it happen? We couldn't tell. And the developers couldn't help us too much either, because they didn't know what we were trying. They knew the technical thing, but when these problems arose, they didn't know what it is costing us. So, ensure database username, database name, and password are saved in a WordPad or other text editor for reference. And very important, ensure when creating the database that the collation is set to UTF-8, Unicode CI. The collation for the data can be set in PHP MyAdmin on the Structure tab. So all of these are screenshots of what you're going to, all right? And it's got step by step. There are 48 slides here. And as we said, the developers can have a copy of it and study it when we are going to have the group work. Developers can come together, copy it onto one of their systems, and study it and come up with a number of series of questions or challenges or better solutions, which we'll share with our technical partners who are back in Nigeria. Now, I just want to run through this to the end, then we can take a look at what actually comes up. Is the network still available? Now, let's see if we can get the network to work and see a practical demonstration of what